Joining us now to help make sense of the economic impact of the Marcos-Trump meeting is JC Punongbayan, Assistant Professor at the UP School of Economics. Magandang umaga sa'yo. Welcome to the show.
Good morning, Gretchen. Thanks for having me.
Okay, this 1 percentage point reduction in tariff is being framed as a win by the administration. According to President Marcos, it is a significant achievement. But some are saying, particularly Senator Lacson is saying, that this is the worst insult that could be given by a very close ally. Where are you at on this?
Well, Gretchen, we have to take into account that this is still higher than the original 17% tariff that U.S. President Donald Trump set back in April during his Liberation Day. So one would hope that the Marcos delegation would somehow be able to reduce the tariff, maybe lower than 17%. And one would also think that we kind of deserve a much lower tariff given our strategic partnership with the U.S., especially where the West Philippine Sea is concerned. When you look at the experience of other countries as well, who are lining up and negotiating with Trump, Indonesia, for example, was able to reduce its tariff rate from 32% to 19%. Vietnam, 46%, they more than halved it to 20%, and in Japan, from 25% to 15%. So the 1 percentage point reduction is very marginal.
That's correct, ano? And galing tayo sa 17% back in April. But if you take a look at the negotiations with other countries, particularly Japan, that was from 25% to 15%. And President Trump said Japan had agreed to invest $550 billion at my direction. What leverage do we have here on the negotiating table that you think that we could use to be able to lower the 19% tariff down?
Well, I think, Gretchen, our strongest trump card would be our partnership with the U.S. when it comes to the West Philippine Sea. And as I said, one would hope that maybe the U.S. sees the value of that. But you have to remember that even back in April, shortly after Liberation Day, there were efforts coming from the Marcos economic managers. They went to the U.S. They kind of they tried to negotiate with the Trump administration to no avail. And then even with the president himself speaking with U.S. President Donald Trump, again, there doesn't seem to be much progress here. But I think President Trump also mentioned that he clings to this notion that other nations will pay for these tariffs. He said in his social media post yesterday. But again, going back to the basic economics of tariffs, the American people will have to pay higher prices for the things they import from us. So in fact, the Americans have more to worry about when it comes to all of these tariffs. But that's not to say that the Philippines will not be heard. Again, the U.S. is our biggest export destination, specifically for semiconductors, food, and agricultural products. So all of these sectors may possibly be hurt in the Philippines.
How do you think that 1%, 1 percentage point tariff cut could affect the exports to the U.S.? I mean, paano kaya natin ito mararamdaman?
Well, first of all, there could be direct effects. We have a number of big semiconductor firms located here in the Philippines, and their biggest market would be the U.S. So I think they will feel the effects of the tariffs the most. But of course, we have many agricultural exports as well, food manufactured products as well. So there's that direct effect. But I think we should also worry about the indirect effect of all of this. Because remember that Trump is imposing tariffs not just on the Philippines, but most other countries of the world as well. And many multilateral agencies have already downgraded their growth forecasts for this year. Very recently, ADB also reduced the growth forecast for the region as well as the Philippines. So there's a very high risk that with the disruptions in the global trading system, the global economic system will also kind of crash a bit. And of course, there's so much uncertainty, policy uncertainty right now. And then I think another risk would be higher inflation because if inflation increases in the U.S., then that will force the hand of the Federal Reserve to increase their interest rates, similar to what we have seen back in 2022, 2023, and many central banks globally will follow suit. Most likely the Bangko Sentral of the Philippines as well, especially when we see the full effects of the tariffs. So that will create another round of discomfort and pain, economic pain, not just for Americas, but also for the rest of the world.
If you take a look at the our exports to the United States, tama ka, no? Majority of it, or more than 50%, belong to the electronics and semiconductors industry, office and machine parts, and the agriculture exports are significant but smaller. I mean, we also export coconut oil to them, knowing that the Philippines is a major coconut exporter. Pero hindi ba parang yung pagdating naman sa mga electronics and semiconductors, there is an exemption in tariff rates because of the information technology agreement. Have you heard of that?
Yes, maybe a few weeks ago, I think there were news about Trump or the Trump administration thinking of exempting certain products from all of these tariffs, including semiconductors. But in fact, I think Trump reversed that or kind of walked back on that idea. And in fact, he wants to impose tariffs on things like copper, for example. And copper being, of course, an important, a crucial component in the building of semiconductors. So, in fact, there's still a lot of uncertainty. Semiconductors are not out of this tariff trouble yet. So we might yet see tariffs affecting the semiconductor industry. In fact, many economists and analysts are quite fearful that there could be a big disruption when it comes to semiconductors still.
Fish and marine products from the Philippines were valued at over 1.2 billion US dollars in 2022, with the US ranking as the top buyer. So that could be an industry that is most affected here, agriculture, fish and marine. But if you take a look at other countries in Southeast Asia, we have Indonesia also at 19%, we have Vietnam at 20%, and we do know they are our competitors when it comes to the manufacturing chain. Well, doesn't that put us on level ground with these countries?
Well, one would think that, but in fact, there are significant barriers in terms of attracting all of these manufacturing investments in the Philippines vis-a-vis our ASEAN neighbors. One of the problems with the Philippine economy is that our export manufacturing sector is not very diversified. So when it comes to the list of products that you mentioned, semiconductors would be the key export of the Philippines, and then all of the other types of categories of products that we export are actually very small compared to semiconductors. So they are far second and third compared to semiconductors. So moving forward, we need to diversify further our export industry because we're exporting too much semiconductors and too little of everything else. When in fact, there could be, as you mentioned, fisheries, for example, and then fruits, as well as other food manufacturers. So these could be very lucrative industries when it comes to exports, but we need to attract many more investments so that we can boost our export of these products.
Okay. The current trade deficit with the United States stands at $4.9 billion, which means that we earn more, right, from this relationship than they do. I mean, if you take a look at yung mga parang in realistic terms, paano kaya ito makaka-apekto sa atin? Mostly ba doon sa mga exporter natin? Dahil usually pag may product galing Amerika, pag dumadating sa Pilipinas, mahal. Alam natin yan, in practical terms. So mostly this will be felt by those industries that you mentioned?
Yes, just a small correction. We actually have a small trade surplus with respect to the U.S. And then conversely, the U.S. has a trade deficit with respect to the Philippines. So that's the reason why the U.S. is actually aiming at all of these countries in which they incur trade deficits with respect to other countries. Trump thinks that the U.S. is being taken advantage of by all of these other countries. But having said that, yes, you're right that exporters will be hurt in semiconductors and other industries. But on the other hand, you have to remember that Trump also announced that he will make an open market out of the trading relationship with the Philippines, so that allegedly there will be zero tariffs imposed on automobiles imported by the Philippines from the U.S. So in other words, the deal that Marcos struck with the Trump White House is that it will be a bit easier for the Trump administration to export, for the U.S. to export their products to the Philippines, specifically in automobiles, but we will have a harder time penetrating their market. So it's a very uneven relationship. But I'm also led to think that do we really need more big, supersized American SUVs in the Philippines with the traffic congestion and all? Maybe the Marcos administration should have lobbied more aggressively so that we have, at least for some products, some of these could be exported more freely into the U.S. at the same time that the U.S. wants to penetrate the Philippine market more.
If you take a look at that particular sector, though, the automobile industry, we don't produce or manufacture our own cars. So the direct hit would probably be on Chinese cars, right? And Japanese cars. Is that correct?
Exactly. So we don't have a car manufacturing industry in the Philippines, except for, of course, certain big auto players like Toyota, etc. However, it's well, if you look at the Philippines' economic history, back in the day, back in the 70s and 80s, we were actually able to produce or manufacture cars here at home. But we kind of neglected the manufacturing industry, the auto manufacturing industry, so that now we're by no means a key player in this area. Compare that with the current experience of Vietnam, for example. They're so advanced that they're actually one of the bigger exporters of electric vehicles. And the U.S. is their biggest market for all of that. Well, of course, one could say that they're a victim of their own success in the sense that they have become an export powerhouse. We've not become that. And now Trump is targeting Vietnam and not us. However, I think it's to the credit of Vietnam that they were able to develop all of these industries precisely by allowing more investments into their country.
Okay, let's go back to the leverage the Philippines has in this on the negotiating table. Apart from the West Philippine Sea issue, where the Philippines could host American bases and store weapons, as we do know, that is one of our cards here. The other thing that could be brought to the table is the role in the production chain of semiconductors, right? Because the Philippines is in the middle segment of that production chain. We do assembly, we do testing, we do packaging. Could the Philippines, I mean, as a close ally of the United States, help them in building a more independent economy in the semiconductor industry? I mean, pwede ba yun? Pwede ba yun natin gawing leverage?
Well, actually, when you look at the global value chains in semiconductors, we're not part of the higher value end of that production chain. Taiwan, of course, dominates this sector. So in the Philippines, we're not even able to build or manufacture semiconductor wafers or the more complete version of semiconductors, but something before that step. So we, as you mentioned correctly, we focus on packaging and assembly. So that's exactly the reason why the semiconductors would be the biggest export of the Philippines, but also our biggest import. Again, that points to the lack of diversity in the Philippines. So in other words, the components come to the Philippines, we package and assemble them somewhat in our factories here, and then we ship them again to other countries for final processing. So the dream is for the Philippines to be able to produce higher value-added goods, including final products, not just semiconductors, for example, laptops, entire laptops, smartphones, etc. And that's exactly what Vietnam is able to do now, but we're not able to do that. So I think there should be intense focus among policymakers to pursue export diversification and strengthening investments in these areas.
So that we are able to find other markets for our products and not just be on the receiving end, being a reactive economy to the trade war. Maraming salamat sa iyo for your insights today, for putting into context that 19% tariff by the United States. We have JC Punongbayan, Assistant Professor at the UP School of Economics.